All right, so a couple days ago, Dimitri asked a really good question about the Balto beads and how they differ from other beads. And, you know, I'm interpreting this as also a question of what makes good beads. So my goal right now is to stay on topic and not tangent into all the considerations that go through in a bead design. So, most important thing for an individual bead is that it is symmetrical, that the four corners are as identical as possible within the bead and to its neighbor. So the more consistent all the beads are in the set to each other and within themselves, the more predictable the set will be, the more fun it is to play. If we take a look at the dimensions and the general design philosophy, we can start to see some differences. So here we have this much gap. Here we have this much gap. This is approximately 7 millimeters. This is approximately 4 millimeters. You would expect this set to be tighter, except it's not. Here we get one wrap and full tension. On the smaller gap, we get more wraps. We get 2 wraps, and it's still pretty soft here. What's happening? So it comes down to a few factors, but the main contributing one is the distance between the center of the joiner and where the beads contact one another. So I'm just showing on the opposite side here. So this would be the contact point, and the center of the joiner would be somewhere over here. If we compare that to these beads, the Krivo beads, we start to see a difference. So right off the bat, we can see that the joiner is a little bit closer to itself. It's a smaller gap there. Just one sec. I'll point to the correct thing. So from this edge of the joiner to this edge of the joiner versus the same here, we can see the purple is larger, right? But really the other major contributing factor is how much material there is from the edge of the hole to where the beads run along each other, which is going to be, a little bit further down, like right here. If we look here in the Krivos, it's quite close. So there's the edge of the hole. Edge of the hole is right here, which is almost at the contact point, which is going to be right there. If we measure it, it's around 1.5 millimeters distance. I'll show you. .56 right there. And we go over here, you'll see it's larger than that, and it's around 2.3. If we go to the edge of the hole, the contact point. Sorry, 2.1, let's call it. But since the joiner is fatter here too, it won't, the joiner path, the center of the joiner will be further offset. We're talking about a 0.5 millimeter difference, but as you can see, it does change the tension significantly while allowing you to reduce the bead gap. So I think that's a large defining factor of a Chetki set is its tension profile. So here we have a high tension profile, here we have a low tension profile. Beyond that, the major differences is the bead profile this way. So if we look at it, the Baltos have a flat, the Krivos are curved, and they're also smaller by 2 millimeters. So if we put them one on top of the other, and line up the edges. You see the Baltos are larger. The reason being is the Krivos are meant to sit under the joint in these two sections. This is where they like to fall into naturally. Whereas the Balto is meant to sit on the flats. So the outside flat, the middle flat, and the inner flat. The thing is, I find that if it's on the outer, you're starting to risk it flying off a lot. If it's on the inner, it's starting to kind of get stuck during transitions. It's a little too far in there. So with the Krivo, the idea was that it wouldn't make its way into there because it would sit here. And if you transition to the outside, again, you still have your fingertip for control, and you can do more aggressive spins a little bit easier with the Krivo than the Balto. However, the Balto excels at high tension moves, which is stuff like that, where you're doing a backhand rotation and you're inputting tension to the set. You're relying on the tension in the set to transfer energy. The Baltos really shine there. So a little bit faster, a little bit more flex, a little bit slower. Weight-wise, these are 30 grams, these are 40 grams. So that also makes a noticeable difference in terms of the play. So we've talked about the tension profiles, we've talked about the bead dimensions, we've talked about the general profile of the bead. I think the only thing we haven't touched on is this profile. But this profile is, so if we look this way at the bead, and then here we see the cutaways are more aggressive on the Krivos, and this is again to help that tension profile, to decrease the distance between the bead contact point and the center of the joiner. In terms of other design factors to consider, the Balto is more geared towards convertibility to bracelet in terms of having a minimized paddle size so that you get less of this kind of empty triangle when you wear it. Or if you wear it in this position, which my camera angle does not want to support me showing, kind of where you have it rested against the edge and then the bottom one is, against the bottom of your wrist. So you create like an L there. That's how I usually wear mine, to keep it pretty low key and not getting caught on stuff. The Krivos are not as optimized for that. So they have a longer end paddle. They are optimized for play, for long time play, being lighter, and less optimized for a bracelet mode. But they still maintain the tension settings so that you can experiment and find what kind of tension, what kind of gap you like for this style of play. And I hope that gives you guys some insight to the directions I've taken with these two sets. If you have any more questions, specific, non-specific to these guys, to just Chetki in general, I'm more than happy to talk about it. I slightly obsess over the physics of these things, and it's always interesting to me. That about covers it. I hope you guys have a great week. Cheers.